Do you want to learn about God's kingdom mission across the globe? Is your ultimate goal as a follower of Jesus to lead others to Him, but you aren't sure how to do that? Then I'm so glad you're joining us today. I'm your host, Allison Henry, and welcome to the Follow Me podcast. We hope to share what God is doing through missionaries and ministries throughout the world and give discipleship and evangelism tips so you can follow Christ and His command to spread the gospel. All right, so we are back with Matt and Tricia Ball, and this time we are going to just get into some practical advice with some different stages in parenting. All right, so let's jump into it. Think back, okay, to your toddler days, because I'm specifically asking you for myself. No. So think back to your toddler days. What scriptures helped you in this stage, and what were some of the main issues that you had to work through, and how did you disciple your children in that?
Oh, goodness. Boy, when we had our first little one, it surely is a life changer, that's for sure. The basic things that you start realizing, you've got to teach them.
You got to keep them alive.
That is true.
I mean,
good point.
We have a human we need to keep alive now.
Oh, by the time they're a toddler, they're a little better, right?
Yeah. Well, you're talking toddler, okay.
I left out the baby stage.
Okay, well, yeah.
But teaching them to share.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big one. Yes. And like we talked last time about being in the group with the small group that I was in. We had a lot of other kids there. So that was a perfect time to teach them about sharing.
Yeah.
And to some of our kids it came easy and to others it didn't. But that was definitely an issue.
Can I name names who was not a good sharer?
No,
in the groups? You know who you are.
But just helping. We never wanted them to feel entitled or like everything's going to be done for you. So we did want them to learn to help, and trying to help them learn to clean up after themselves, just listening in general. The verse that comes to mind, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Yeah. So we really wanted to try to help them develop good habits and make good decisions, so that would follow them on.
Yeah. Matt, do you have anything different from the newborn to toddler
I tried to
stage?
stay out of the toddler side, just...
It's all up to me.
No, I did not. But that was probably for me, that was harder than older for me because, they're spending so much time with her. I was shift work.
Yeah.
I was a shift worker. So there were weeks that I was home for the whole week, but then the rest of the time I was on midnights. I might be sleeping during the day when they were, but, for us, and this is just for us, what really I think helped that toddler age was, Tricia sacrificing her teaching career to be home. And that was tough.
Yeah.
Tough financially, tough decision. But having her there all the time was really important to me. And and it was really important to her, too. And that's not saying it can't be done other ways. Please don't think that. But for us, I was blessed to be able to, get a job that would allow her to stay home, which a lot of people don't have that luxury. But I think that played a big part in the way in my opinion, if I look back, I think I never regret that. The sacrifices we had to make financially, driving vehicles that had 300,000 miles and never having a brand new vehicle or not going anywhere fancy, going camping instead of going to the beach or whatever. I wouldn't trade any of it because we knew what our kids were getting fed into them, all the time at that age. Yeah. And they're like sponges at that point.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So.
Oh.
Yes, that was a good verse. What was that one again?
Proverbs 22:6.
Proverbs 22:6. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I think the next stage was 5 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of 5 years old is what, when they start kindergarten, right? So
right.
5 to 10, what scriptures and what were some of the main issues that were harder?
As far as scriptures, I continue on with Proverbs 22:6. It's one of my favorites.
I need to write that down.
Yeah.
I really do. And the issues that that kind of developed at that time were when they started school, and they're not in the little bubble anymore of, with mom and dad and with our small group or grandparents or cousins, but they're branching out and they're meeting new people. They're just being exposed to some more things. So that was when we just needed to continually pour into them and just really emphasize the values that we wanted them to have, because, there are so many outside influences. So that was definitely, could have been an issue.
I think that's where it really starts to kick in, where keeping them in the Bible school and the Wednesday night and the Sunday night, all that being something they do, not something that's an option, really plays a big part, because they might get some of the stuff that you don't want in the world on a few of those days, but come Wednesday, they're back, around others. Now at home, they're still getting that.
Right.
That's what we try to do. But I'm not going to lie. It's not like we read them Bible scriptures every night when they came home. That's not what we did. We
sit down. School number
sit down.
2.
We're going to read from Psalms today, kids. That's not how it worked. But we just kept pouring this into them every day and reinforcing it with church, not just relying on church. That's the key, I think, is 24/7, not 3 days a week.
3 days a week, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What were some of the main issues? Like you said, that they're learning other things, they're around other people. Were there certain behaviors that became more prevalent at that stage, or?
Well, I can remember like the way that they would talk back to parent, to us. You kind of had to nip that in the bud because they were just hearing that.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that.
No.
By all means, they weren't perfect. We weren't perfect, but that was something that we just didn't want them to model.
Yeah.
Things that they would watch on TV, we were trying to be careful with that because there were a lot of popular shows with some other friends at school, that we didn't really necessarily want them to watch. So that
we set the base early on that
issue.
kind of stuff, and it wasn't. I think that's what was key. It was consistent from the start. It wasn't. You know what? We're not going to continue watching that. We just started out. They knew. I'm sure they got to. Now granted, we're talking really young, so I don't think that's as big a deal right there. But that's where you got to start it. You get to the next phase when they're, a little older. That's when what you're doing right here, I think, starts to pay off a little bit.
Yeah. You mean those preteen and teenage years? When it really gets hard. Okay, so moving into the preteen and teenage years then, what are some of those big issues? And if, at any point, if you have different scriptures, just throw them out there. We definitely want to hear them. We want our listeners to have reference and whatnot. But yeah, so preteen and teen years, what did you start to see, and what were some of the ways that you had to disciple through that?
I'll start with that one because that's where I noticed they were preteen and teen is where they start to start to find themselves and what they're starting to looking for their identity.
Yeah.
Whether they know it or not, that's what they're doing. They're seeing other kids that they think, oh, he's cool.
Yeah.
He does. I want to be like him. I want to be like him or her or whatever. And they have a lot of friends because they do this. That's the trap that can start happening right there. And I think that's where I would say my wife, Tricia, has done a great job of, and sometimes I hope I did, but really building our kids up at that age, building them up and making them feel like they were good enough. They didn't need to be someone else. They were who they were, and believing in them and help support the things they wanted to try as long as they were within, the realm of what we felt was right. But, we didn't want them to go out and do anything really crazy, but, really being supportive of what they were doing. And she did a really good job of mama bearing that kind of stuff, I think. I don't think we're going to go to that event or whatever, but go ahead.
You're sweet. She did a great job too. But you're right. I mean, they were just kind of trying to find themselves, just to figure out who they wanted to be. And I would oftentimes remind them that they're in the world, but not of the world.
Yep.
We are here, but we're not part of everything. And some scriptures that helped me that I would try to just encourage them with. Well, I would try to encourage them just to be a light with their kid, with their friends. So Matthew 5:15 and 16, it says, "Let your light shine before others. Christians should live so that others can see their good works and give glory to God." But yeah, just helping them understand that Jesus wants them to be set apart, and that they don't have to participate in everything. They don't have to be like everybody else, but they're a child of God, and He wants their light to shine.
Yeah.
I think another issue that started at this age was just making their faith their own.
Yeah.
Because, like we were raised in the church and we wanted to raise our kids in the church, but there came a time where they had some questions about their faith, and they wanted to make sure that they believed because they truly believed, not because we told them to, or that it's the right thing to do, but that there was a genuine heart change there. So for a few of them, that was trickier, for them.
Yeah.
Which ones specifically?
But thankfully, the youth group and stuff, they are very good at that point, coming alongside them and helping them to understand that. Just know, especially at that preteen phase, that's kind of where it starts. And they just have questions. Sometimes they have questions that might seem a little bit out there, but it's just stuff that they're genuinely wondering about.
Yeah.
And so whenever they would bring that to us, we would really try to answer that as thoroughly as we could. But it's almost like a little bit of, you kind of have to let go just a little bit and let them figure that out.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch sometimes if they're flailing just a little bit, but then it's a beautiful thing to see when they get it, when they realize, Jesus is my Savior, and I believe in Jesus because I believe in Jesus, not because anybody told me to.
Yeah.
So through the youth group with the youth camps and the retreats and just the lessons and the volunteers there and the youth leaders pouring into them, that just really helps them at that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about them coming to you with questions, how did you guys establish like open communication with your kids? Like you welcome questions, you want them to come to you. How did you guys go about that? Did it start in those younger years, like at 5 or before?
I always wanted them to know that they could come to us, and we would just tell them no question is ever stupid. Don't ever be embarrassed. We can talk about anything under the sun. Like if it's even hearing a bad word on a bus, is that a bad word? Tell it to me, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we learned a lot of words there.
But I definitely wasn't perfect at it, but I really wanted to try from the beginning to get them to understand that they can come to us with everything. Yeah. And I know sometimes, especially when you're in the preteen, teen years, sometimes you might want to talk to someone else about things too, which was great that we had so many people that they could talk to. But yeah, and sometimes I would even start those hard subjects with them, just throw it out there and, talk about something, and they're a little bit bewildered, but then they're like, oh, okay, I guess it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, what about you? Maybe with the boys a little bit more.
I think it was more of a just trying to show them, as boys, they're looking for a role model all the time. You want them, that is where it really begins to see, I think, how they're going to be shaped as men, because they're seeing how I react to, situations at home, how I treat their mother, what I watch on TV, what I do on my spare time, what I do with my what I'm doing when I'm at home, they see, and I tried to make sure that there was never anything that I was, not that I was perfect at it, but there was, I wanted to be doing them to be able to emulate me as much as possible, and they're learning then, and it starts then, and it keeps getting more until they get in high school, and I think they try to do a little different there, but find their own way there. But a lot of times they end up right back to where you see, I think, what they wanted to, I don't know, all by the grace of God, but it is really, so I don't know that I can think of anything I did specifically, other than you just always had to be on guard with your witness to them, for what you were doing every day. Not be different, outside. If you had the kids along with you, and you were, I had buddies that would come over and we'd be hunting, or people from outside the church. I was the same way with them as I was with her and everyone. So you are the same person, no matter what. And that's what you want them to be too. You don't want them to be chameleon, where they're, they're one way at church, one way at school, one way at sports, whatever. And it's hard to do. But that is what I think that's what I really was striving to do, and failed sometimes, but I think that's what I tried to do.
Well, and I think, so earlier you were talking about consistency in training, but now you're kind of talking about consistency in your witness and in your behavior and your actions, how you're living. So that idea of consistency is just really important in general, whether it's in parenting or as a believer, and just trying to disciple in any way, like being consistent. That's a really good principle to point out, I think.
And I feel that's what I looked at with my mom and dad. I know, went out, and I remember spending time with my dad around other guys, and I seen he's the same person that I was the same person then as he was when we were at the church, whatever. And I didn't see a different person.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, I'm in church mode now. Now I'm at work mode.
Yeah.
And that was something that I always appreciated with my parents and my grandparents, that I grew up, emulating. And that's what I tried to do with my kids. So it just shows you that it just keeps going on and on. And if you can keep it up, and it just takes one, if maybe that's not how you were raised, but you can start it now.
Yeah.
With your kids.
Yeah. Well, and you don't always have to have like the right words, because
No,
they're learning
I
so
never
much
did.
from what you're modeling,
Yeah.
like learning from watching you.
And they'll make fun of you too when you get older.
Well, yeah.
They make fun of me all the time.
Me too. Me too.
Oh, Tricia, nobody could make fun of you.
Oh, they do.
Okay. So then what about like college and up? Because I know that's kind of the stage that you guys are at now with your parenting. So
Yeah.
scriptures, are they changed at all? And how is parenting different? Because, they might not be in the house anymore.
You're not done.
Okay.
That is very true. And I think it's just trusting in that verse, train up your child in the way they should go, and when they were older, not depart from it. Trusting that that's what's going to take place. That you've done your very best to guide and direct them, and you've prayed so much for them, and we're just trusting that they're on the right path that God has for them. And it's hard to let go.
Oh, it's horrible.
Becca our last one just went to college, and it's very hard because they want that independence, and they want to know that they can make it on their own. And so it's just, like he said, it's definitely not finished, because we're here for them, when we get those calls, if they're discouraged, and we want to do our very best to encourage them and just build them back up.
And some of them are beginning their marriages, and
yes,
they're seeing the beginnings of that. And I think you go clear back to they know what our marriage was like. So you can't stop, they're still looking at us, and they're laughing at us a lot of times, but they're also, I think, hopefully they appreciate that. So,
Well, and they're watching you more intently in different ways than they were before.
Yeah.
Now they're looking at how you're treating each other as husband and wife, not just, how you raised me when I was little, but, your relationship together. And so it's a different phase of teaching and training them. Have there been any standout issues now in this phase of College Plus that have been different from before that you guys have had to work through, or is it just trusting and letting go?
I think we're just now hitting the first one, and that is they're all out. And finding
adults.
and a good friend of mine told me, I was driving home from actually the day after we dropped off Becca, and we're boohooing about it and sad, and and he had went through this, and he told me, he said, it is sad, but he said you got to be proud of where you've got them. This is what we're called to do, is to train them up, send them out.
Yeah.
They are doing what is meant to happen. And don't be sad about that. Be glad that you've got them to that point. And then I want to take that even farther, is our work's not done.
Right.
They're going to be, two of ours are married now, more to come someday, showing those how to select a spouse that aligns with your values. And I couldn't be prouder of two of my two boys for finding godly women that are aligned with their faith and our that's big, you know, finding like-minded people to raise a family with, you know. So many people, I think you got to be careful about the flash of a relationship and not really looking deep into what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, you're raising a family, and that family is going to raise a family. It's a big decision, you know. So finding the right person that you know is for me, looking for someone that is a Christian that has the same values, that believes in God and that believes in, you know, the things that you believe in, and are going to align each other in the way you're raising children. That's huge, because otherwise it could be a lot of issues there, you know.
Yeah.
We didn't have any trouble with that, but
Thank the Lord. A sweet part of this phase of life is kind of the friendship that develops, you know, with your adult kids, and that's it's just very.
I like
special.
them more now than I did when they were younger, for the most part.
You do.
Some of them.
But people told me, you know, as I was raising my family, you know, they're like, "Don't blink; it's going to go by so fast." And you're like, "Oh, whatever." But that's just so true. So don't blink. But the friendships that we do have they're just precious. And I tried so hard not to be a hovering mom. You know, I tried to. Because sometimes I think that can translate into, I don't think you can do it, you know. So just kind of stand back. I wait for them to ask me for advice before I give it, you know, at this stage of life. But yeah, just trusting that God's got them. And I'm just so thankful that His Holy Spirit's with them 24/7 when I can't be.
Yeah. That's sweet. And like, you just mentioned that letting them come to you to prompt the conversation. I think that's a really good way. Like, the door's always open for them to come to you, but they have to initiate, because hovering can really could potentially cause kids to want to like flee more or to test the boundaries more and more if they're being hovered. So I think that's good advice, though. And then I think whenever you're talking about, you know, families raising families, and then they're going to raise a family, you know, you're teaching them how to go. It makes me think of Paul's letter to Timothy when he's saying, continue in the things that you learned since childhood. You know, Timothy learned all these things in the family, and then he continued to grow in them as he went on and got mentored by other people and had life experiences. But that foundation that he had as a kid, like, set the tone. So I think that's kind of what you're speaking to. You know, you set the tone as much as you can and disciple them over the years. And then when they reach this stage, you know, hopefully they have learned what they need to, but you continue to guide them as you can. As they go into those, especially the huge life decisions, you know, that are going to be really generationally impactful. Yeah. So that's super important. Okay. Well, as we come to a close, do either of you have a final word of encouragement for our listeners? What do you got for us?
I just feel having them in church is just huge. And you may feel a little pushback sometimes, but I think if you just make that something that needs to happen. And then just the prayer that is just so powerful. I can remember each morning, just when the kids would get on the bus, is when I would pray. And just knowing that God's got them and that you may not have all the answers, but when we're weak, He is strong. And He will pick up where we left off. What we leave undone, He's going to finish. So we don't have to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect. But He is. That's who our trust is in.
Absolutely.
I think that's exactly the way I feel, and also, you're not alone in this. So
Right.
I don't think you ever need to look at raising a child as it's just you. The Lord's going to put people in your path that's going to help with guiding that, because you're not going to be with them 24/7, at some point. So you've got to pray up the people you got to pray up your kids, and you got to pray up the people around them. And that's huge. Just really praying that the kids are going to, the Lord's going to put the people in front of them that guide them when they're not with you, and that you've trained them up to where they're going to notice that, and find a core group of like-minded people that that share something that you can share that faith with. It might be a sports group. It might be just that you all sat in the same row at church and you got to talking, or, get to know people, because you can't do this alone. I'm not always going to be there, when she needs something, but maybe one of her women's group ladies are. There might be something I'm going through that she can't understand, but I can call one of the men, the men in my group, and say, what do you guys do here? And it's not always necessarily a scripture. It's not always a biblical thing. It's just life.
Yeah.
I got a truck that's broke down.
Yeah.
How did you fix that? That may not sound biblical, but them helping you learn how to navigate through that, it just shows how we lean on each other. It's the same way with raising kids. How did you, so and one of my kids is doing this, and I need to get them to, how did you get them to stop doing that? Well, here's what we did.
Right.
So find a community. It takes where there's a village. It takes a village.
Takes
whatever.
a village.
I mean, I saw the joy in multiple women's and men's eyes each time my kids graduated. Same way with when their kids graduated. And when they walked down the aisle, some of these kids, they felt like we did that. We helped do that. And they helped. There's a wide variety of people that can take credit for how our kids have turned out because of who the Lord has put in front of them. So, and that's what I feel is important.
Well, thank you guys for all of your wisdom. One more chance for an embarrassing story of one of your kids. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I am not allowed to tell any.
I'm just kidding. But thank you guys so much for joining me, and just for sharing what you have on raising some kiddos, and your work's not done, like you said. So
should we tell them now that you're pregnant?
I knew it.
We're having another.
The factory's closed.
We'll see.
Wait for the grandkids.
All right, there we go.
Okay. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I know that people are going to be excited just to hear from you guys, and they just love that you're willing to pour into them too in the church. So thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you have enjoyed our show and want to hear more, please subscribe wherever you're listening. We long for people of all nations to be reached with the gospel, because John 3:17 says, God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. And we are called to help in that process. We are in the ministry of reconciliation. If God lays it upon your heart, please share our podcast so that people can be inspired and equipped to make disciples and follow Christ as he commands. Until next time, we pray God empowers you as you seek to follow Him.